He slammed my head against the wall because I refused to live with his mother. Then he handed me a mirror and said, "Fix your face before she arrives." That day, I looked at my reflection, swollen, shaking, unrecognizable, and something inside me broke quietly. I stopped crying. I stopped begging. He thought he had destroyed me. But what he didn't know was he had just built the woman who would take everything back and build an empire from the ruins he left behind. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what city are you listening from? I love knowing how far these stories travel. And if you've ever been told to stay quiet, this one's for you. Hit like, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe so you don't miss the next life story that will make you feel something real. Now, take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear isn't fiction, it's a mirror. I still remember the sound of the cup shattering before his hand even reached me. That's how it always started in our house. Silence first, then noise, then pain. My name is Ava Brooks, 33 years old, interior designer, quiet by nature, and married to the kind of man people point at and say, "You're so lucky." His name is Ethan Carter, charming, successful, perfectly mannered in public, and perfectly terrifying behind closed doors. When we first met, he made me believe he was everything I'd ever prayed for. He listened, he brought me flowers, he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I didn't realize then that sometimes people stare so deeply because they're measuring how much they can own. It started small, little comments about how I dressed, how I talked, how much time I spent with friends. Then came the expectations. "When we get married," he said once, "you'll love my mother. She's my heart." I smiled, because that's what good fiancés do. I didn't know that sentence would one day cost me blood. After the wedding, we moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment downtown. I decorated it myself. Soft lighting, cream walls, framed photos of us laughing in front of the ocean. For a while, I believed happiness could be designed like a room. If you place enough light in the right corners, maybe the darkness won't find you. But darkness has a way of remembering your address. 2 months after we settled in, his mother started calling every night. At first it was sweet. "How are you both doing, dear?" Then came the criticism. "He's losing weight. You're not feeding him enough." And then the demand. "You should both move in with me. Families stay together." When I said I preferred our own space, Ethan didn't say much. He just went silent. The kind of silence that feels like walking barefoot on broken glass, every second waiting for the next step to hurt. The argument came one evening after dinner. He stood by the doorway, his tie loosened, jaw clenched. "She's my mother, Ava. She's getting old. I'm not leaving her alone." "I'm not asking you to," I said quietly. "But I need a life that's ours, not hers." His eyes darkened. "You sound ungrateful." "I just want peace, Ethan." "You'll have peace when you stop fighting me." He moved closer. I could feel the anger coming off him like heat from a fire. I backed away until my spine hit the wall. "Ethan, please." But the plea didn't matter. His hand moved faster than my breath. The slap came sharp and deliberate, not out of loss of control, but full control. He wanted to see what I'd do. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, dizzy, hearing the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my heart trying to leave my body. He looked at me, not with regret, not even anger, just irritation, like I was a stubborn child. "Don't make me do that again," he said coldly. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom. My cheek was already purple. I turned on the faucet so he wouldn't hear me sob. When I finally looked in the mirror, I didn't see a wife. I saw a warning. The next morning, he brought me coffee and a small box of makeup. "Cover it up," he said. "Mom's coming for lunch. I don't want drama." Just like that. As if bruises were stains and pain was a mess that could be wiped clean before company arrived. I stared at him, trying to find even a trace of the man who once kissed my hands and promised me protection. There was none. Only control. only ego dressed as love. I did what he asked. I covered it up. The mark, the fear, the tremble in my voice. When his mother arrived, she walked through my home like a queen inspecting her property. "This curtain colour is awful," she said. "He always liked blue. You don't even know his favourite colour?" I smiled and said nothing. I felt like a ghost in my own house. When lunch ended, Ethan left for work. Before leaving, he leaned in close and whispered, "Don't answer calls. Don't go anywhere. I'll be late." Then he kissed my forehead, like he hadn't just broken it open the night before. As soon as the door shut, I exhaled for the first time in hours. I pressed a hand over the bruise hidden under the makeup and thought, this can't be my life. But it was. I spent the rest of that afternoon cleaning the dishes she'd dirtied, fixing the table she'd criticised, pretending my world wasn't collapsing in slow motion. The clock ticked louder than usual, each second whispering, "Leave, leave, leave." But I had nowhere to go, no family close, no savings, no voice that anyone would believe. At sunset, I sat by the window. Outside, life moved like nothing had happened. Cars honked, kids laughed, the world kept spinning. Inside, I was stuck in a still frame. When the streetlights came on, I went to the closet, pulled out my old sketchbook, the one I hadn't touched in years. I flipped to a blank page and drew a door, just a door. Plain, wooden, slightly open, because that's what I needed, a door out. As I stared at the drawing, I whispered to myself, if this is love, then I've been loving wrong my whole life. And that night, while he slept in the next room, I hid a small suitcase under the bed, along with something he would never notice, my will to survive. For weeks after that night, I lived like a shadow in my own home. Every sound made me flinch, a door closing, a drawer slamming, even the soft click of his shoes on the floor. I learned to move quietly, to breathe quietly, to exist quietly. Ethan didn't hit me again right away. He didn't need to. He knew that fear was more efficient than violence. Once you break something, it starts breaking itself. I began counting my days by the temperature of his moods. If his voice was calm, I could eat in peace. If it was sharp, I skipped dinner. If it was silent, I didn't sleep. His mother visited more often. Every visit felt like an inspection. She'd walk through our apartment with her perfume heavy in the air and that same fake smile plastered on her lips. "Oh, you look tired, dear. Are you sure you're taking care of my son properly?" I wanted to scream, "Your son is breaking me." But I smiled instead. "Of course, Mrs. Carter, he's my priority." Sometimes she'd stay the night, sleeping in the guest room. Ethan would insist on it. "She's lonely," he'd say, but I knew it wasn't about loneliness, it was about control. She wanted to be in this house, to watch me, to make sure I knew my place, and he let her. One evening, she walked into the kitchen while I was cooking. Without a word, she grabbed the spoon from my hand, tasted the soup, and said, "You put too much salt. That's why he doesn't eat your food." Then she poured it down the sink. Just like that, like my effort meant nothing. Ethan walked in later and said nothing, just looked at me like I told you so. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling felt like it was pressing down on me. I stared at the small crack near the corner, wondering how long it would take before it split the whole thing apart. I felt the same way. One more crack, and I'd collapse. The next morning, I sat at the small desk in the kitchen where I used to work on my freelance designs. It was now covered in bills and dust. The candle I once lit for calm had melted into nothing but wax residue. I stared at the cold wick and whispered, "You and I, we both stopped burning." I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to run. But every time I looked at the door, my body froze. Fear is strange. It doesn't always chain your hands. Sometimes it chains your courage. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that maybe he'd change, that maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, he'd remember the man he used to be. It's a dangerous lie, the kind that sounds like hope but tastes like poison. One afternoon, while cleaning, I found an old photograph tucked behind a drawer, Ethan and me, smiling, the day he proposed. I looked at it for a long time, trying to find what had gone missing, Then I realized it wasn't love that had disappeared. It was me. I stopped calling friends. I stopped answering messages. I couldn't let anyone see me like this. And even if I did, what would I say? Hi, I'm fine, just living with bruises and silence. No. I became a professional pretender. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect lie. Every morning, I made him breakfast and waited for him to leave before allowing myself to breathe. And every night, I went to bed beside him, pretending to sleep while replaying the same thought in my mind. There has to be a way out. There has to be. The first time I tried to leave, I didn't make it past the front door. I had packed a small bag, some clothes, my passport, and a few sketches I'd hidden under the mattress. But when I grabbed the handle, I froze. My hand wouldn't move. It felt like the metal itself was warning me, you won't survive out there. And maybe it was right. I had no family nearby, no savings, no one who even knew what was happening behind these clean white walls. If I disappeared, Ethan would tell everyone I was unstable. And they would believe him. He was charming, successful, polite, the kind of man who said thank you to waiters and donated to charities on holidays. Who would believe that man was a monster? So I stayed. Not because I forgave him, but because I didn't know who I was without fear. Days bled into nights. My body moved automatically. Cook, clean, smile, nod. I became a ghost in perfect rhythm. But ghosts still see things. And what I saw one morning changed everything. It was a Sunday. Mrs. Carter had stayed over again. She was in the living room, sipping tea, scrolling on her phone, talking loudly about obedient wives. I was in the hallway, dusting, pretending not to hear. Then I noticed Ethan's briefcase was half open on the chair. Inside, tucked between papers, was a photo, me sitting at my kitchen desk, taken from outside the window. I froze. The angle, the lighting. Someone had been watching me. He had been watching me. My stomach turned cold. I realized then he didn't just want control. He wanted ownership. That night when he came home, I asked carefully, Ethan, did you take this? He didn't even look up from his drink. Of course I did. You looked peaceful. I like seeing you that way. Without knowing? I asked softly. He smirked. I'm your husband, Ava. You don't have to know everything I do. The way he said it, calm, almost tender, made me want to scream. But I didn't. I just nodded and went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection again. This time I didn't see fear. I saw rage, quiet, careful, and patient. Something cracked inside me that night, but not like before. This time it wasn't breaking, it was awakening. I pulled the old sketchbook from the cabinet and sat on the cold tile floor. I started drawing again, lines, shapes, angles, spaces, anything to remind myself that I could still create, not just endure. Every page became a whisper of who I used to be. Every design, a small rebellion against the man who tried to erase me. The drawings turned into full blueprints, modern, minimalist, strong. They were nothing like the soft designs he once admired. They were mine, sharp, defiant, unbreakable. When I was done, I looked at them and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not freedom, but control. I didn't have power yet, but I had a plan forming, quietly, invisibly, beneath the surface of fear. And that night, as Ethan slept beside me, his breathing heavy and careless, I whispered into the dark, "You will never touch me again. Not like this. Not ever." The clock ticked past midnight. For the first time in months, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I stayed awake, thinking, counting, planning. It wasn't hope yet, but it was something stronger, the beginning of defiance. The morning after I whispered my promise to the dark, the world looked the same, but I didn't. The coffee still smelled bitter, the walls were still white, Ethan still kissed my forehead before leaving for work like nothing had changed. But something had. I was still afraid, yes, but now I was also awake. After he left, I went to the window and opened it wide. Cold air rushed in, brushing against my face like freedom trying to find a way back inside me. For the first time in months, I didn't hide from it. I let it sting. I wanted to feel alive again, even if it hurt. On the kitchen table, my sketchbook waited. I opened it carefully, afraid he'd somehow sense it, like he could smell rebellion. The pages were covered with rough pencil lines from the night before, angles, rooms, shadows. I hadn't realized it then, but I was designing more than spaces. I was designing a way out. That afternoon, I searched my old email, one I hadn't opened in years, the one under my maiden name, Ava Brooks. There, buried under spam and forgotten messages, I found an old thread from Sophia Miller, my college roommate, my first creative partner, and the only person who ever told me, "You don't need permission to shine." She was now creative director of a major architecture firm in New York. I hesitated for hours before typing a single line. "Hi, Soph. It's been a long time. I miss design. I miss me." I hit send and immediately regretted it. I expected silence, maybe a polite reply days later. Instead, she responded in 5 minutes. "Ava, oh my God, I was just thinking about you last month. Where have you been hiding? Let's talk. No excuses." My hands shook as I typed back, "Tomorrow morning. Please, don't tell anyone." That night, Ethan came home late. He smelled like whiskey and cologne, his two favorite lies. He asked nothing about my day, and I told him nothing. We ate in silence, him scrolling through his phone, me counting my breaths. But inside, my heart was already somewhere else, waiting for morning. When I opened my laptop the next day, Sophia's face filled the screen. Same fiery red hair, same spark in her eyes. But when she saw me, her smile faded. "Ava," she whispered, "what happened to you?" I looked down before answering. "Life." I told her bits and pieces, never the full truth, just enough to explain why I'd disappeared. She didn't push, she just said softly, "If you ever need a door out, I'll open one, no questions asked." I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "I just want to work again," I said. "Something small, maybe freelance. I still have my portfolio." Sophia's voice turned warm. "Send me your designs. I'll handle the rest. And Ava, don't let him take your talent too." Her words stayed with me long after the call ended. I spent the next 3 nights reworking my old projects, redesigning, refining, remembering. The click of my pencil became my therapy, each line a pulse of resistance. Sometimes my hands shook so hard I could barely hold the stylus, but I didn't stop. Creating made me feel human again, alive again. When I finally sent the files to Sophia, I signed them with a name Ethan had long erased, Ava Brooks. 3 days later, she wrote back, "Ava, the client loved it. You're still the best. I want you to work on a new contract, anonymously. I'll pay you directly. Trust me on this." I didn't know then how ironic that would be, that the new contract belonged to the Carter Group, Ethan's family company. Working in secret became my salvation. Every design was like building a life outside those walls. He thought I was just home, cleaning, cooking, existing. But in truth, I was creating structures, stories, strength. The first payment Sophia sent wasn't much, but it was mine. I withdrew it in cash, folded the bills, and hid them inside an old book on our shelf. The Great Gatsby. A tragic love story. Fitting, I thought. At night, Ethan would watch TV while I sat beside him sketching quietly. If he asked, I'd say I was doodling kitchen remodel ideas. He'd nod absently, never once suspecting that the blueprints I was drawing were for his own company's future headquarters. One evening, while he was asleep, I checked my phone and saw a message from Sophia. "The board approved your design, Ava. They want to meet you, or at least your company rep. Do you want to make it official?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "Yes, I want to make it real." That night, I registered a small LLC under my maiden name, Brooks Design Studio. The woman he tried to erase was legally reborn. Weeks passed and my quiet rebellion grew roots. Ethan still yelled sometimes, still demanded control, but I no longer listened the same way. His words bounced off a new kind of armor, one made of purpose. The day his mother stopped by again, she made the same snide remark as always. "You look tired, Ava. You should take better care of yourself. A woman reflects her husband, you know." I smiled. "Yes, ma'am," I said calmly. "But sometimes a reflection stops mirroring and starts shining on its own." She frowned, not understanding what I meant. And for the first time, I didn't care. That night, as I sat at my desk working on a lighting layout for a boardroom design, I realized something profound. I was no longer afraid of being seen. I was afraid of being invisible again. The bruise on my face had faded months ago, but the scar inside me had learned to speak, not in cries but in blueprints, signatures, and silence. And somewhere in that silence, I found the faint sound of power, a whisper that said, "Ava, you're not done yet. You're just getting started." The first time I saw my company's name printed on a document, I cried. Not loudly, not with sobs, just quiet tears that slipped down and disappeared before anyone could see them. Brooks Design Studio. It wasn't just a name, it was proof that the woman Ethan had tried to erase was still alive and signing contracts. Sophia handled everything from New York. She was my voice, my front. The clients believed Brooks Design was a small but promising firm run by a discreet designer who valued privacy. And they loved the work. They loved my work. What I didn't know at first, what made everything almost poetic, was that one of those projects belonged to the Carter Group, Ethan's own family company. Their headquarters were being remodeled, and my design had been chosen anonymously through Sophia's firm. When she told me, I went completely still. My heartbeat sounded like thunder in my ears. My husband was about to pay me to redesign his empire, and he had no idea. I spent nights refining the project: steel, glass, light. It was a space that screamed transparency. Funny, I thought, for a company that had built its wealth on secrets. At home, I remained the perfect wife. Dinner on time, makeup flawless, smile rehearsed. He still barked orders sometimes, still made me feel small, but I had a secret he could never touch. While he slept, I ruled his world from behind another name. He started to notice something different about me. "You're quieter lately," he said one night, suspicious. "Good," I replied softly. "Peaceful wives make peaceful homes." He smiled, satisfied, not realizing I was lying through my teeth. Inside, I was no longer peaceful. I was calculating. When I needed to send emails or take calls, I told him I was freelancing to keep myself busy. He allowed it, as long as it didn't interfere with his mother's visits. That was his mistake, thinking a woman's busyness is harmless. Each payment Sophia sent, I split in two, half for living, half for leaving. I kept the money in a second account under a fake business license. No one, not even Sophia, knew where I planned to go when the time came. I started waking up earlier than him. At first, it was just to work quietly before the day began. Then it became something else, a ritual. The soft click of my keyboard before sunrise felt sacred, like I was typing my way out of captivity. One morning, as I watched the sun rise through the blinds, I whispered, "This is mine. Every second, every breath, every file, mine." Ethan noticed the change but didn't understand it. He assumed my calm was submission. He didn't know it was power disguised as surrender. He still went out drinking with clients, still came home late smelling like whiskey and excuses. But I no longer counted the hours. Instead, I counted deposits. The bruises had faded, the fear hadn't. But it was shrinking, replaced by something colder, cleaner, focus. Mrs. Carter came by one afternoon, unannounced as always. She wandered around my living room, picking at every detail. "These new chairs are too modern," she said. "They don't suit Ethan's taste." I smiled politely. "They suit mine." Her lips tightened. You should remember your place, Ava. Oh, I remember it, I said softly. I just don't live there anymore. She didn't understand what I meant, and she didn't need to. Let her think I was still small. Let them both think that. The best kind of revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, invisible, patient. And while they kept trying to control me, I was quietly building something neither of them could ever destroy, my freedom. The day the contract was finalized, Sophia called me at dawn. Her voice trembled, the kind of tremble that comes from disbelief, not fear. Ava, they signed it. You're officially in. The Carter Group just approved the full project under Brooks' design. For a second, I couldn't speak. I just sat there in silence, staring at the sun coming through the blinds. It was strange that something so bright could rise on a day that started in darkness years ago. Sophia laughed softly through the phone. Do you realize what this means? Yes, I whispered. It means they'll see my work before they ever see me. That week, my calendar filled up. Meetings, layout approvals, material sourcing. Everything had to go through Sophia, but every creative decision came from me. At night, when Ethan thought I was sleeping, I'd sneak to the kitchen table and work until my fingers cramped. My world existed in two realities, the one where I was a silent wife, and the one where I was quietly becoming someone powerful. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was rebuilding the same empire that had broken me. Every blueprint felt like a confession written in steel. Every design choice was personal. Glass walls, open corridors, sunlight everywhere, because I wanted transparency to haunt them. I wanted the building itself to whisper, "You can't hide anything anymore." During one of our progress meetings, Sophia told me, "They're impressed, Ava, especially the CEO. He keeps asking to meet you." My heart skipped. "Which CEO?" I asked. "Ethan Carter." I laughed, a low, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "Tell him the designer prefers to stay unseen," I said. Sophia hesitated. "Are you sure? This could be a huge opportunity for visibility." "I'll show my face," I replied, "when it's time to be remembered, not just seen." That became my mantra, not just seen, but remembered. Ethan's behavior at home shifted again. He started acting kind, overly kind, bringing flowers, asking about my day, complimenting my cooking. The kind of man who senses a storm coming and mistakes the silence before it for peace. I let him play his part. He didn't realize that while he was trying to win back control, I had already taken it. At dinner one night, he said casually, "My company's rebranding, big renovation project, some new designer our board hired, anonymous apparently, must be some kind of diva." He chuckled. I smiled, stirring my soup slowly. "Maybe she just likes her privacy." He looked at me, amused. "What woman in design doesn't want her name on a wall?" I met his eyes. "The one who already knows who she is." He laughed again, not understanding a thing. That was the beauty of it. He was still living in the illusion of control, while I was already rewriting the script of our lives behind the curtain. The following week, I received an invitation, a mandatory meeting at the Carter headquarters to review interior prototypes. Sophia texted me, "You don't have to come in person, I can handle it." But I typed back, "No, it's time." I stared at my reflection in the mirror before leaving the house. The woman looking back wasn't fragile anymore. She wasn't scared. She was composed, steady, almost dangerous. I tied my hair back, put on a navy suit, minimal makeup, power disguised as simplicity. Ethan had already left for work. He had no idea who he was about to meet in that boardroom. As I picked up my briefcase, I whispered to myself, "You thought I was gone. You were wrong." That day, for the first time in years, I didn't look over my shoulder when I closed the door. I walked out like I belonged to the world again, because I did. He just didn't know it yet. When the elevator doors opened to the executive floor of Carter Group, the air felt too clean, filtered, perfumed and cold. It smelled like everything Ethan stood for: control, presentation, perfection. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked down the corridor. Each sound echoed, a reminder that I wasn't sneaking anymore. I was arriving. The receptionist looked up, smiling politely. "Good morning. You must be from Brooks Design Studio?" "Yes," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Ava Brooks." She nodded and gestured toward the large glass doors at the end of the hall. "They're already waiting for you in conference room 1. I thanked her and kept walking. The glass doors reflected my image, the navy suit, the straight posture, the eyes that had learned to hide storms. For a brief second, I saw the old Ava in that reflection, trembling, makeup hiding bruises. Then I blinked, and she was gone. Inside, voices buzzed, mid-level managers, project leads, a few senior partners. They quieted when I entered. Sophia stood at the far end of the room, her expression calm, but her eyes alive with pride. She gave me a small nod, a silent, "You've got this." And then, at the head of the table, I saw him. Ethan Carter. He was flipping through documents, unaware of who had just walked in. When he finally looked up, his smile froze. For a second, time fractured. I could almost hear the crack in his composure. "Ava," he said, the word falling out like disbelief. I tilted my head slightly. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." His eyes darted between me and Sophia, then back to me. What are you doing here?" I set my folder on the table, calm, deliberate. "I'm here to lead the design presentation for your company's headquarters. Brooks Design Studio was awarded the contract 2 weeks ago." Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. A few executives shifted in their seats, confused. Sophia stepped forward smoothly. "Mr. Carter, I believe you've seen our renderings. Mrs." She caught herself. "Ms. Brooks will be walking you through the final adjustments today." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No," I said. "It's business." The projector hummed to life behind me. On the screen appeared the first slide, an open glass atrium bathed in light, the heart of the new Carter building. I gestured toward it. "This space represents transparency," I said evenly. "A company built on clarity, not walls." I saw him flinch. He understood the subtext. As I walked through the presentation, lighting, structure, flow, I never raised my voice, never looked away. Every word, every pause was intentional. I wanted him to feel the weight of my calm. Halfway through, his hand clenched the edge of the table. "You planned this," he muttered. I met his eyes. "You taught me planning, remember?" The room fell so still that I could hear the air conditioning hum. For the first time, Ethan looked small. Not because I shouted, but because I didn't have to. When the presentation ended, the board erupted in polite applause. One of the partners said, "Impressive vision, Ms. Brooks. Truly elegant work." I smiled. "Thank you. That means a lot." Ethan remained seated, frozen, watching me gather my papers. I turned to him and said quietly, "Don't worry, Ethan. This isn't personal." Then I leaned closer, just enough for him to hear the truth behind the mask. "It's poetic." And with that, I walked out, heels sharp against the marble, leaving behind the man who once silenced me, now drowning in his own. I could still feel the echo of that room when I stepped into the hallway, the faint sound of applause, the heavy silence Ethan left behind. For years, I had walked out of rooms feeling small. This time, I felt tall. Sophia caught up with me near the elevator. Her smile was tight but proud. "You were brilliant," she whispered. "Was I?" I asked quietly. "Because I wasn't trying to be." She nodded. That's what made it terrifying. When the doors opened, I turned back for a moment. Through the glass wall of the conference room, I saw Ethan still sitting there, unmoving, staring at the screen where my name had just been displayed in bold white letters. Ava Brooks, lead designer. The man who once told me I was nothing was now employed by my creation. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like gravity. heavy, real, irreversible. That evening, I came home before him. The house felt unfamiliar, like it already belonged to someone else. I walked past the kitchen, the living room, the hallway where he once hit me, and stopped in front of the mirror. There were no bruises this time, but my reflection still trembled, not with fear, but with disbelief. When the door finally opened, his voice broke the stillness. "So it's true," he said. I turned. He was standing there in his suit, his tie loose, eyes burning. "You set me up." "No," I said evenly. "You set yourself up. I just happened to be standing in the right place when it fell." He threw his briefcase onto the couch. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." "Did I?" I stepped closer. "Because I remember you teaching me what humiliation feels like." His face twisted, confusion, rage, shame, all fighting for space. For a second, I thought he might hit me again. But he didn't. He just laughed, bitter and broken. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said softly. "It makes me free." He took a step toward me, his voice low. "You have no idea what you've started." "I think I do," I replied. "And the best part? It's already too late to stop it." He leaned in, inches from my face. "Do you know what happens to women who betray men like me?" "Yes," I said calmly. "They build empires." That stopped him. His jaw tensed. He looked at me the way a man looks at something he can't control, with both fascination and fear. I walked past him and picked up my purse. Before leaving, I paused at the door and turned slightly. "Oh, and Ethan? You should probably check with your legal department tomorrow. I filed an independent claim under the company's ethics board." His eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "I already did." I closed the door behind me. Outside, the air felt different, sharp, alive. Every breath tasted like risk and relief mixed together. I got into my car and sat there for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were trembling again, but this time I didn't stop them. I let myself shake, not from fear, but release. The next morning, Sophia called. "Your report reached the board before sunrise," she said. "They're investigating the Carters' financial irregularities. It's serious, Ava. They're panicking." I smiled faintly. "Good. It's time the truth made them uncomfortable." And as I hung up, a thought settled quietly in my mind. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving him. He was surviving me. The morning after the report went public, the world inside Carter Group began to crumble. Not loudly, but quietly, like a building collapsing behind mirrored glass. I watched it unfold from a distance. Sophia sent me screenshots, headlines, board memos, internal leaks. Words like embezzlement, conflict of interest, fraudulent donations started circling the company name. The perfect empire Ethan and his mother had built was starting to rot under daylight. I should have felt satisfied. But satisfaction isn't what I felt. It was something colder, clarity. 3 days later, Sophia called again. Her tone was careful. "Ava, I think you should see this." She sent me a file, confidential accounting ledgers pulled from the Carter Foundation's charity division. The file was labeled Amara Carter, Special Allocations. I opened it, and for a long time, I didn't breathe. There it was, a list of transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars moved into ghost accounts under women's names. One of them was mine, Ava Carter. Except, I had never touched that money, never even known it existed. I scrolled further. Next to my name, in fine print, Property Acquisition, Brookhill Trust, 2017. That was the same year Ethan and I got married. The same year his mother told me, "You don't need to worry about the paperwork, dear. I'll handle everything." My blood ran cold. They had used my name for laundering. They hadn't just controlled my body or my silence, they'd stolen my identity too. For a moment, I couldn't see straight. The room felt smaller, tighter. I pressed my palms against the desk, whispering, "You didn't just ruin my life. You used it." I called Sophia immediately. "Where did you get this file?" "Anonymous source," she said. "It came through a compliance officer. Apparently someone inside the Carter Foundation is leaking information." "Then it's not just a rumor." "No," she said quietly. "It's a storm." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, surrounded by paper, receipts, contracts, bank statements, each one a breadcrumb leading to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to find. By 3 a.m., I found what I was looking for, a signature. Amara J. Carter, right below mine. Except my signature wasn't mine at all. It was forged. My chest tightened. All those times she called me sweet girl, my daughter, while she rewrote my life on paper. I realized the mother-in-law who preached morality in public had been laundering charity money through her own family, and I was her cover. I picked up my phone and opened the voice memo app. For the first time, I started recording, my voice calm, steady, almost detached. "This is Ava Brooks," I said. "For years, I thought abuse was only what you could see, bruises, shouts, control. But there's another kind, the kind that smiles while it forges your name, the kind that calls itself love while signing you out of your own life." I stopped recording. Then I saved the file under one word: evidence. Outside, dawn was breaking, faint light spilling across the blinds, touching every corner of the room that had once been filled with fear. Now that same light revealed something else: proof. As I looked at it, I understood what was coming. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. This was about her, Amara Carter, the woman who taught her son how to break things and call it discipline. And if she thought I would stay silent this time, she was about to learn where I got my patience from. The next morning, I drove to the Carter Foundation. The building stood tall and immaculate, glass walls, gold signage, the kind of place built to look innocent. But now I knew better. Transparency was just another disguise. At the front desk, I introduced myself as Ava Brooks from Brooks Design, here to discuss renovation plans for the Foundation's headquarters. The receptionist smiled and handed me a visitor's badge. No one questioned me. After all, my name was on their own records, the fake ones Amara had created. Inside, the halls gleamed. Photographs of Amara lined the walls, her shaking hands with politicians, smiling with children at charity events, standing in front of donation plaques engraved with her name. Every image screamed benevolence. Every smile was a mask. I made my way to the archives room. Sophia had arranged for a contact to meet me there, a compliance officer named Nadia, the anonymous source who'd leaked the documents. She was young, nervous, eyes darting toward the security cameras. "You have 5 minutes," she whispered. "That's all I can give you before the system flags the access." She handed me a folder, her hand trembling. Inside were hard copies, donation lists, forged signatures, and bank transfers linking Amara's personal account to multiple charitable funds. Some were under my name, others under names of former employees. "She used everyone," Nadia said quietly, "anyone who couldn't fight back." I nodded, my throat tight. "Why help me?" "Because I saw you once," she said. "You came here years ago, smiling, polite. I remember thinking, how does someone look that alive next to a man that dead inside? I guess now I know." I looked at her, a stranger risking her career for truth, and said softly, "Thank you. You're part of something bigger than both of us." She smiled faintly. "Then make it count." That night, I laid everything out on the floor of my apartment. Papers, receipts, photos. It looked like the aftermath of a storm. Except this time, I was the storm. Every piece of evidence pointed to Amara, her false charities, her manipulation of tax-exempt funds, her use of my identity to hide stolen money. And behind every signature was one motive: control. She didn't just want wealth, she wanted ownership over people, especially me. I thought about confronting her directly, but then I remembered the way she used to look at me, with that calm superiority, the kind that says I always win. So I changed my strategy. I wouldn't confront her. I'd expose her, on her own stage. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail. The Carter Annual Benefit Gala, honoring Mrs. Amara J. Carter for her decades of humanitarian service. My fingers tightened around the envelope. There it was, the perfect stage, handed to me by fate itself. That night, I called Sophia. "I'm going to the gala," I said. She hesitated. "Ava, are you sure? That's dangerous. You're walking into her world." "I know," I replied. "That's why she'll never see it coming." Over the next few days, I gathered every document, every recording, every trace of her fraud. Sophia helped me edit a short video, proof that would speak louder than any accusation. We saved it to a small flash drive. I kept it in my purse, next to a single line written on a folded piece of paper. "You used my name to build your empire. I used your lies to build mine." When the night of the gala came, I stood in front of my mirror, hair sleek, dress black, eyes steady. I wasn't a victim walking into her event. I was the consequence walking through her door. The night of the gala smelled like expensive perfume and lies. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers filled with politicians, executives, and people who clapped for power without knowing where it came from. Cameras flashed, reporters smiled too wide. Everyone was here to celebrate virtue. No one knew they were standing in the middle of a crime scene. At the center of it all stood Amara Carter, graceful, radiant, rehearsed. Her diamond necklace caught every light in the room, but her smile was the real jewel, polished and poisonous. She moved from guest to guest, hugging, laughing, pretending her empire wasn't built on the bones of others. I arrived quietly, almost invisible in black satin. Not to blend in, but to sharpen the contrast. The music, the laughter, the champagne, they all blurred into one hollow sound. I wasn't here for celebration, I was here for closure. When Amara saw me, her eyes flickered. Surprise, then disdain. "Well," she said, her tone dripping honey and venom, "look who finally found the courage to leave the kitchen." I smiled. "Don't worry. I washed my hands before touching your reputation." She froze for a heartbeat before regaining her composure. "You shouldn't be here, Ava." "Oh, I should," I said softly. "You'll see why soon." Dinner ended. The lights dimmed. A host took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Mrs. Amara Carter, a woman whose generosity has changed countless lives." Applause erupted. Cameras turned toward her. She stepped onto the stage, radiant under the spotlight, a saint in silk. I stood near the side of the room, hand in my purse, fingertips grazing the flash drive. My heartbeat was steady. I'd practiced this moment in my head for weeks. The timing, the tone, the silence before impact. Amara began her speech, perfect as ever. "Charity," she said, "isn't about money. It's about love. Love for people, love for family." Her voice faltered when the giant LED screen behind her flickered. Then, without warning, the feed changed. Her pre-recorded video faded into grainy footage, an office camera, a private conversation. Her voice filled the speakers, cold, unmistakable. "I don't want that woman near the child again. Do you understand me? Institutionalize her if necessary. That child will never know where she came from. Use her name. She owes us that much." The room gasped. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. The screen cut to images, signed documents, bank transfers, Amara's forged signatures beside mine. The mask cracked. She turned, pale, trembling. "What is this?" "Turn it off," she shouted. But the sound technician didn't move. The truth was louder than her orders now. I stepped forward, taking the microphone from a stunned host. "Since we're honoring transparency tonight," I said calmly, "I thought the public should know how far her love for family goes." The cameras swung toward me, thousands of eyes. For once, I didn't flinch. "This woman," I continued, built her fortune by stealing from her own charity, forging documents under my name, and laundering money through the people she called family. She taught her son that control is love, and he learned that lesson well. You could feel the air change. People weren't breathing. Even the chandeliers seemed to be listening. Amara stumbled backward, clutching her chest. "You ungrateful," she started, but her voice broke. "I'm not ungrateful," I said. "I'm done being silent." The police officers waiting near the back, ones Sophia had quietly coordinated, stepped forward. Their presence was subtle, professional, inevitable. When they reached the stage, the flash of their badges turned every diamond in the room dull. Amara looked at me, fury mixing with disbelief. "I gave you everything," she hissed. I shook my head. "You gave me nothing. You just reminded me what I was capable of taking back." As they escorted her off the stage, the room erupted, reporters shouting, guests whispering, cameras flashing. I stood still, calm amid chaos. The storm was outside me now, not within. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Carter Empire falls. Philanthropist arrested for fraud and identity forgery. News anchors replayed the footage from the gala. Clips of Amara's confession looped endlessly, her voice trembling, her mask breaking. Ethan didn't go to work. He didn't call me either. I imagine he was too busy drowning in the wreckage of the life they'd built on lies. I didn't feel joy, just peace, the quiet kind that follows a scream you've been holding in for years. When the official trial began weeks later, I was called to testify. The courtroom was cold, the lights unforgiving. Amara sat across from me, smaller than I'd ever seen her. The woman who once ruled every room now couldn't meet my eyes. When the prosecutor asked why I hadn't pressed charges earlier, I said because I thought surviving her was enough. But surviving isn't justice. The judge nodded slowly, the gavel hit the wood, and just like that, it was over. Amara Carter, convicted on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and coercion. Sentence, 12 years. Ethan never testified. He didn't have to. His silence was confession enough. When I walked out of that courthouse, cameras swarmed. "Ms. Brooks, do you have a statement?" I looked straight into the lens and said, "Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it." Then I turned and walked away. No more noise, no more pretending. As I reached the end of the steps, the afternoon sun hit my face. For years, I had lived under their shadow. Now, light finally belonged to me. And in that blinding, perfect silence, I whispered to myself, "You built a kingdom on my name, Amara. Now watch me build a future on yours." They say justice ends when the sentence is read. But that's not true. Justice doesn't end, it transforms, sometimes into peace, sometimes into a scar, and sometimes into a new beginning. 6 months after the trial, I moved out of the apartment that once held all my ghosts. I didn't sell it. I left it empty, a monument to everything I survived. The walls still whispered when I walked through, but the sound didn't hurt anymore. It was just memory echoing through hollow space. I found a small house near the coast, quiet, full of light, the kind of place where silence means safety, not punishment. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream of shouting or breaking glass. I dreamed of air, open, endless, forgiving. Sophia visited on weekends. We sat on the porch with coffee, talking about nothing and everything. She'd tease me, "You know you've become a legend online, right? The woman who exposed an empire." I'd laugh and shake my head. I didn't expose an empire, I'd say. I just stopped hiding. We built something new together, the Without Fear Foundation. It started small, a hotline, a few volunteers, then grew faster than we expected. Women from across the country wrote letters, sent messages, shared stories of pain and survival. Many of them signed their emails the same way. "You helped me remember who I am." Every time I read those words, I thought, "No, you helped me remember who I am." One afternoon, a young woman came into the foundation office. Her hands were shaking, her eyes wide, hollow, tired. She said she wanted to apply for a design scholarship we'd started for survivors. As I looked through her application, I noticed her drawings, raw, emotional, full of light breaking through darkness. They reminded me of mine. I asked softly, "When did you start drawing?" She smiled faintly. "The night I decided I didn't want to die." I swallowed hard. For a moment, it felt like looking at my own reflection years ago. I told her, "Then you've already passed the hardest test. The rest, that's just living." She cried quietly, and I let her. No speeches, no pity, just presence. Because sometimes healing isn't about answers, it's about someone staying in the room. Months passed, the world moved on, but traces of the past still followed me like faint shadows. Occasionally, reporters called, asking for interviews, documentaries, book deals. I said no to all of them. I wasn't interested in fame. I wanted quiet impact, not noise. Ethan's name popped up in the news once, an article about his mental breakdown, his bankruptcy, his voluntary treatment. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity either, just distance, the kind that comes when something that once defined you no longer exists. Sometimes I wondered if he remembered the night he told me to cover the bruises and smile. I hoped he did. Not out of vengeance, but so he'd understand the price of silence. A year later, I was invited to speak at a university seminar about women, power, and reclamation. At first, I wanted to refuse. I wasn't a speaker, I was a storyteller. But Sophia convinced me. She said, "Just tell them the truth, Ava, the unedited version." So I stood on that stage, facing hundreds of young faces full of potential. I told them, strength isn't born in loud rooms. It's born in quiet corners, where you decide you won't be small anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back in. It means locking the door and throwing away the key. And healing is the art of becoming your own safe place. When I finished, the room went silent. Then, slowly, applause rose, not loud, not wild, but steady, honest. That sound, soft and human, felt like the opposite of everything I'd endured. It felt like life. Afterward, a teenage boy came up to me. He didn't speak, he just handed me a small notebook. Inside was a drawing, a woman standing in front of a mirror, her reflection smiling back at her. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, he'd written, "You taught me not to be quiet." I looked at him, tears burning in my eyes, and whispered, "Then it was all worth it." That night, I came home, kicked off my heels, and walked barefoot to the bathroom. The mirror was still there, different house, same reflection. I looked at myself for a long time. No makeup, no armor, just me. My hair had grown back, wilder than before. My skin carried faint traces of everything I'd lived, not scars, but stories. I touched my cheek where the bruise had once bloomed. It didn't hurt anymore. It just reminded me how far I'd come. I whispered, "You built a cage, Ethan. You gilded it, polished it, locked me inside. But I built a kingdom from the rust." Then I smiled, not out of pride, not out of triumph, but out of peace, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. Outside, waves crashed softly against the shore. The night breeze carried the faint scent of salt and rain, clean, alive, new. I turned off the lights and let the moonlight wash over the room. For the first time in years, I didn't need artificial light. Because I finally understood the glow I was chasing all along was never out there. It was me. What you just heard isn't fiction. It's not a fairy tale. It's what happens when silence breaks and truth finally speaks. There are thousands of women like Ava, walking through their days with perfect smiles and invisible bruises. Some are still trying to leave, some are learning how to start again, and some, like her, are proving that survival isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of power. If this story touched you, take a moment, breathe, and remember, healing doesn't look the same for everyone. Sometimes it's a loud cry, sometimes it's just showing up for yourself one more day. Tell me in the comments, what city are you listening from tonight? I love knowing how far these stories travel and how they find their way to hearts that need them. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit like, share this video with someone who needs a little courage, and subscribe because more real stories are coming. Stories that remind us no pain is wasted, no silence lasts forever, and sometimes the quietest voices change everything.